I'm Leslie Moran. I'm chair of the Birkbeck College Equalities Committee and I'm a professor in the law school. Well, I want to begin by separating gender and equality. I'll begin by talking a little bit about gender and what that means for me. Gender for me is about masculinity and femininity and the values that are attached to those two genders. And in crude terms, the distinction between masculine and femininity is a structure that attributes positive values to the masculine and negative values to the feminine. And it's through that structure of positive and negative that discrimination is produced in and through gender. The other way of thinking about gender is the distinction between men and women. I think my preference is for thinking about it in terms of masculinity and femininity, because that also requires you to think about the complex interface between the masculine and the feminine. So, for example, I would see a man as having both masculine and feminine characteristics. Or if we think about transgender politics, there's a huge debate about the interface between masculinity and femininity, its performance and its operation as a lived experience and the way values are produced in and through that performance and lived experience. Equality is, for me, a term that relates to a variety of things, such as rights and opportunities. So equality of rights for men and women, equality of rights as they interface with masculinity and femininity, equality of opportunity, and to have equal access to resources, equal opportunities to use those resources, equal access to various endpoints and goals. It's also about shared responsibilities and similar responsibilities. So if you think about childcare, so equality of responsibility for men and women with regard to the raising of children, or looking after older members of the family, or within the community more generally. Caring is not just an attribute of femininity, it also needs to be an attribute associated and understood in terms of masculinity. And the last point that I would raise around equality is that it's, for me, about recognition of equal value when it comes to difference, because in equality scholarship there's a big debate about whether equality is about sameness or whether it's about difference. And for me it's about both, so giving equal value to things that are the same or similar, but also recognizing difference and attributing value according to that difference so that you don't differentiate between different types of experience or different types of performance or existence. Gender equality to me is about challenging the discriminatory effects of the social structure that I've just been talking about and the way it impacts on individuals and their life experiences to limit or to facilitate. And I think an important objective of gender equality is to get rid of those damaging effects of that discriminatory structure. Well, I've just been talking about the effects of the discriminatory structures. So for me, gender diversity and equality is important because it seeks to address those damaging effects and negative consequences of a discriminatory structure that operates in and through gender. There's a strong moral case for equality, gender equality, and that's all about egalitarianism for me, giving equal respect to individuals. And there's another argument that's commonly presented, and that's the economic argument. We'll all be more successful, our society will generate more value, if we give priority to equality, because that will unleash the potential that each of us has and that will enrich the society as a whole. I think on a personal level, coming from a working class background, I was always conscious of the experience of women in my family. Both my mother, maternal grandmother and my mother both worked from the age of 14, but they worked in very particular settings, and the economic value that was attributed to the work that they did was always much less than men who were doing similar jobs would have experienced. So it's always been there's been a constant lesson about the way women experience economic discrimination and I think attached to that social discrimination. So that's always been a driver behind my interest in gender equality. Well, there are many challenges. One challenge that I'll begin with relates to those who occupy the elite positions, the privileged positions. What is it going to take to get them to give up those positions or to create opportunities for other people to occupy those elite positions? And I think that raises a whole raft of questions about how we think about the hierarchies, the social hierarchies. And one argument that has come out recently in scholarship that I've been reading is that men are overrepresented. It's not that women are underrepresented. So how do you address that overrepresentation? And that might be an interesting way of reframing the debate. But I still think the challenge will be that those who occupy elite positions are not just going to turn around and say, okay, we've had enough, we're moving on, you can occupy them now. So that's one challenge. I think the second challenge, and one that I think is particular to higher educational institutions such as Birkbeck, is that as an institution, the diversity of the organisation mirrors what you find in many other organisations. So the organisation is most diverse at the bottom of the pyramid and least diverse at the top of the pyramid. How do you begin to change that? And I think in higher educational institutions, it's a particular problem because of the lack of career pathways within the organisation. And that's damaging for the organisation in all sorts of ways because we have a huge talent at the base of the organisation, and ideally it would be best to nurture that talent for the benefit of the organisation, but there are a few career pathways that enable that to be possible. So the potential always is that the rich diversity at the bottom to enhance for individuals in that position in the hierarchy, if they want to enhance their career options, they're going to have to leave and move elsewhere. Well, I think Birkbeck and other colleges need to address that and to think more about how we can channel the enthusiasm and the skills that we have in our diverse workforce to enrich diversity throughout the hierarchy. And another challenge for Birkbeck, I think, is positioning equality and diversity within a multiplicity of other policies, and also putting it into the context of an organisation and a sector that has been under siege and is likely to be under siege from shifting government agendas. And I think the challenge is perhaps best captured for me in the word compassion fatigue. It's seen as just one other item that's taking the pressure too far. Whereas I think, again, we need to rethink and reframe the way equality is integrated into the organisation, because my sense is that it is a part of everyday workplace activity and practice. And I know across the college as a whole, people are passionate about equality and diversity, but trying to harness that passion and ensure that that passion works through at all levels of decision making and feeds into a culture whereby we're constantly checking and thinking about how successful we are in promoting a more diverse organisation. That's the challenge that we face, how to harness that enthusiasm without it being seen as a burden and an unacceptable responsibility. And perhaps last but not least, the challenge is one of putting gender equality into, I think, a more complex equality and diversity landscape. And in some respects that's easy because gender is about marital status, it's about sexual orientation, it's about race and ethnicity, and it's about disability. So to think about other strands of diversity as extra is misunderstanding the nature of gender equality, because I think gender equality is intimately connected with all those other things. And also, if you think about diversity in other settings, such as disability or sexual orientation, it's inevitably going to connect with gender. So all these agendas are intimately connected. And again, we need to think about how we maximize that interconnection to enhance the work that we're doing and the initiatives we're taking around equality and diversity.